Hello friends, welcome to yet another sneak peek into our biology and bioengineering summer camp. In this summer camp, we will learn about the world of biology and bioengineering in 21st century. Let us meet our guest speaker, Professor Anil Kumar, who will join us at the summer camps. Professor Anil Kumar joins us from Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. Professor Kumar is currently a chair professor at IIT Bombay in the Department of Chemistry, Center for Excellence in Nanoelectronics, National Center for Photovoltaic Research and Education, and National Center for Excellence in Technologies for Internal Security. He also serves as the Vice President for Flow Society of India, Secretary for Polymer Society of India, Treasurer for Polymer Processing Academy. His research interests include continuous flow processes and printable optoelectronic devices based on conjugated polymers. In this direction, his main focus is on the development of handheld explosive sensors, electrochromic devices, thin film optoelectronic devices, and transparent conductor, etc. His group has developed a state-of-art continuous flow process lab and also conduct regular training programs and workshops in continuous flow processes to train the next generation of human resource in this important emerging technology. Based on the processes, he started a company, Sycon Polymers India Private Limited, and another company, startup, is in pipeline. His group also has developed many technologies, including transfer of technology in the domain of handheld explosive sensors and continuous flow processes. For his contribution in the field, he has been awarded with 2017 NASI RIL Platinum Jubilee National Award for application-oriented innovations. We are really excited to have with us Professor Anil Kumar.
May I now request Professor Anil Kumar to please join and share his lecture today. Can I request our technical team to help Professor Kumar for starting his video?
Yes, good morning. I think the microphone has started, so I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
And I still can't share the screen, so screen and video are still disabled.
I think they'll give you.
Yeah, sure. I think they will just slowly do it. Yes, now I think that's wonderful. Yeah. I hope the screen is visible now. My slides are visible to all.
Yeah, it is in the full screen.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Professor Srivastava, for giving me the opportunity and setting up the stage with a wonderful talk. I really enjoyed listening to the realities of the future. I still don't call it fiction because whatever the fiction is, that's the reality very soon. And that's what we have been doing. And I'm sure these children are excited about the future. And they must be wondering how to get on to be part of these developments. So science is interesting. It's a long drawn process. It does not happen overnight. Don't think that any of these ideas just suddenly somebody woke up in the morning and said, let's do that, and it happened. It's a gradual process. It starts from the very childhood. You need to be curious. You need to be aware of your surroundings. And slowly the science just picks up from there. So today I'll discuss some of the themes and some of the day-to-day activities which can help you in becoming a good scientist and to appreciate science. A formal training is not really essential for science, just the curiosity is what drives. Magic, we all get excited. To me, what Professor Srivastava just showed, they all look magical to me, but that's going to be the future science. So magic and science are two sides of the same coins. Everything looks magical till we understand it. Once we understand, it becomes a pure science. Science is everywhere. We really don't need to go to schools and colleges to do science. You just open your eyes, look around, and you'll see science happening in reality everywhere. You can wonder why there's so much green around us. Why is the color of the sky blue? Is seeing believing? We keep telling people that seeing is believing. So we'll touch on some of these things and see how science evolves from the basic objects. Let's look into this first. We keep saying seeing is believing. So if I ask you, what is the color of the water? Most of you will tell that water is colorless, because in the chemistry class, the very first lecture we give, and we say water is colorless, tasteless, and odorless. And day to day, we see water like this, and we say, yes, water is colorless. And that's sort of our immediate response. First response is it's colorless. Then I show them another picture. And then I say, yeah, it's blue. No, it's blue because now it's the color of the sky. It is still water is colorless, but the color of the sky is blue. And then I said, okay, let's make some paintings and drawings of natural scenes. And if I'd ask 100 students to do the same and collect 100 paintings, the one thing will be common, they all use blue color for the water. It's amazing. They all use blue color. If they knew it is not blue, they could have used any color. So inherently, they all know it's blue, but you ask them, they say it's colorless. Then they say it's color of the sky. I say, okay, let's go to an indoor swimming pool. Now there's no sky. And if you look carefully, the tiles in the swimming pool are white. They are not blue. The roof is brown. And that's what pretty much you will say now. Something is wrong. Now it's no more sky, nothing. So what's going on? What is so interesting in chemistry class, tasteless, odorless, colorless, you come to the drawing class and it becomes blue. Inherently, we know it's blue, but every time we answer that question, it's colorless. That's a perception. And this perception comes from the fact or the ignorance of the tools which we use to come to this conclusion is colorless. We use our eyes and brain to analyze it, and our eyes tell this is colorless, and we conclude that's colorless. And it is not because of the blue color in the sky when you see in the ocean and other places. The reason water is blue in color, or actually the fact is that the water color is blue, but since we use our eyes, the color which water has it is so weak that our eyes cannot detect it, or our eyes cannot sense it. What we are saying is our eyes have limited solubility or limited sensitivity. It's not the water which is colorless. So the conclusion is the same. When I look at using my eyes on a bottle of water, a glass of water, it looks colorless, and we blame the water to be colorless. We never imagine or think that it could be that the water is colored or eyes are the culprit which are creating these issues. So the moment you start asking these cross questions, where you know the object, you know the activity, and you know the tools which are involved, and if you look into this cross connection of this, that's where the science starts. Okay, so what we are saying is water is colorless. However, the color is weak, and you will learn in science as you go along. As you increase the depth of the water, here the depth of the water is few centimeters, then few feet, and then few meters. As you increase the depth of the water, the strength of the color increases. That's a Lambert-Beard's law, which we use for all absorbents, which is directly proportional to the color strength. And that's the reason when you're deeper the water body, darker the color of the water, and that's really darker blue, lighter blue, and it becomes this. Water is water. You cannot say water in the sea is dark blue, water in the swimming pool is light blue, and water in the bottle is colorless. No. It is your eyes which create this illusion, but water is color, and this color is blue. Okay. Now, some of you still believe that it is because of the color, which is the watercolor is because the sky, and the sky is blue in color. Then the question should be asked, why the color of the sky is blue? We all know that's pretty much high school. That is a scattering, and scattering, the lower wavelength gets scattered much. White light has all types of color. So you know VIBGYOR, violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. And we say shortest wavelength scatter the most. That's given by scientist Rayleigh. It is inversely proportional to the wavelength to the power 4, which means shorter is the wavelength that will scatter the most. And that's why during the daytime, we see the color of the sky as blue. Now, if you ask you what are the colors in white light, every one of you will tell VIBGYOR, violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. If that is true, if these colors are true, the shortest wavelength is violet, then indigo, and then blue. And if scattering is the phenomena, the color of the sky should have been violet or indigo, but definitely not blue. And this confusion again arises because we again forget that the tool which we are using is eyes, and eyes do have the sensitivity to different colors. So in reality, the color of the sky should be violet or indigo, but the violet light is getting absorbed by the ozone. Indigo is very small in amount, our eyes can't see it. So the first color which is visible to us, to our eyes, and the shortest wavelength, that comes out to be the blue color, and that's the reason color of the sky is blue. So your observation and analysis that is because of the scattering is correct, but then you need to take a step further and tell why it should not be violet or indigo. And since every species has different sensitivity to eyes, I won't be surprised if for some of the animals, the color of the sky could be violet or indigo, or may not be blue, maybe green or somewhere, we don't know that. So the science is an interplay of various tools and activities, and we need to take care of that when we analyze and do science. We could keep on extending this interesting phenomena. Daytime, the color of the sky is blue, but if you look at morning and evening, it's amazing how different shades of reds and orange you see in the morning and evening. And that should again worry or should sort of create curiosity in you. What makes the colors so red and orange in shades during the morning and evening, whereas daytime, they remain the blue? And again, if you understand the phenomena, how the colors come in, what are the colors originate from, they are all from the white light. And during morning and evening, the sun is farthest from us, that is at the horizon. During the daytime, sun is just above us. And when it is above us, it's the shortest distance compared to when it's farther. And when it is farther, the shorter wavelengths do not reach the Earth. The longer wavelengths do reach the Earth or the object what we are observing. And that's the reason these longer wavelengths are red and orange. They reach us much more compared to blue and green. And that's the reason in the morning and evening when sun is very far, we see red shades and we see more of the orange shades. So the same phenomena, you keep on extending it to different activities. Why stop here? I can ask you another question. This is, I don't know whether many of you have noticed it or not. If you look at the sun, of course, you can do it during the cloudy day, but you can take a picture of the sun during morning, evening, and during daytime. You'll be surprised that the sun looks much bigger in the morning and evening compared to the daytime. And in the previous slide, we have just discussed the colors are because the sun is farther in the morning and evening. So that is strange. The sun is farther in the morning and evening, but it looks bigger. And that brings us to this. I'll give you, since sun is not available to us, look at this picture. There are 3 cars parked. And if you just look at the picture and somebody asks you, which one is biggest and which one is the smallest, immediate answer will be This is the smallest car and this is the biggest car. Now, you'll be surprised to know that this is what your perception is. In fact, the reality is all the three cars are of the same size. And I'll show you if I put a grid on this and I just move this grid, look at this now. They're exactly touching the four sides of the biggest and the smallest car. So when you look at this picture, it is the perception, it is the eyes which are giving you an illusion that this is bigger, and that's exactly happens with the sun. What happens? Eyes try to create an image as a whole image, and the brain processes the image. So what you are seeing is not because of your eyes, it is shown because of your brain. Okay. And this is a very famous statement, which I'm sure many of you have read it or heard it. Eyes do not see what mind does not know. What's trying to tell you is, whatever you are seeing, it's processed by the brain. And whatever your eyes are only detecting a signal, the image is created by the brain. And brain can only create information and image based on prior information which is given. So when you look at this picture, when you create the image around the biggest car, you see background trees and the houses. In the front car, you don't see the trees and houses. They are much, much beyond the perception, the view of this car. And brain knows the size of the car, size of the tree, the distance of the tree, the size of the house. And it creates a collective picture where the image of the car is much bigger than what it should be. When it creates an image in isolation, the image is what it should be based on the distance. The same thing happens with sun. During morning and evening, there are buildings or there are images around the sun, and the brain works out the size of the sun and the distance of the sun along with the images and the size of the other objects, and collectively it shows the size of the sun, which is much, much bigger. So if you focus on this image for some time and just keep on looking at this image for 30-40 seconds and ignore the surroundings, this car will shrink to the size of this one. And I know it is difficult to do in a live session. To prove my point, I have another example, which will be much, much easier for you to understand. Here, it's a mask of a Charlie Chaplin, and mask is hollow on the other side. Okay. Now, I will rotate this mask, and you will see something very interesting. The information which brain knows is that, let's say this is the mask, it is rotating. Sorry. Yes. Now, brain has been told from the childhood that the nose always comes out of the plane of the face. You have never seen a nose which is inside the plane, which means brain has no information that nose can be inside the plane. It is always outside the plane. And every time brain sees an image which consists of nose, it will take nose as something which is protruding out of the surface. What this artist has done, he has created the, sorry. To create this. I'm just trying to play this one which was working and then stop. Yes, now you focus on this mask. Artist has drawn the face on the back side of the mask, which is hollow. And you will see the hollow mask till the nose come into focus. Yeah, it is in a hollow mask. The moment nose comes into focus, your brain has only single information that nose should be out of the plane, and the mask becomes full. And then as soon as the nose disappears, it becomes hollow again. So your brain is the one which shows you an image. Eyes are only detecting the information. Try focusing next time in the second round and focus that no, it's a hollow mask. It's a hollow mask. But the moment that becomes visible nose, your brain won't let you see that hollow mask. Watch this now. And as soon as the nose disappears from the vision, it becomes a hollow mask again. Okay. This is another thing which you should be wondering. Look at how beautiful the green color has been used by nature. Whether it's animal kingdom, plant kingdom, or human kingdom, even we try to aspire green buildings, green energy, everything green. And everything, everywhere green, green looks beautiful, green looks very pleasant, green is happy, green is good mood. Why do you wonder why green, green, everything green is good? Again, the same principle applies here. However, what is the common thread for all of these? The common thread for all of this is this object, the eyes. And it turns out that eyes have different sensitivity for different colors. And the sensitivity is maximum for green color. And if you don't believe, you look at this. This is the spectrum of eyes for different colors. And you look at the green has the maximum sensitivity. If I relate green to be 100%, look at the indigo and blue, very, very less sensitive. Reds. So in the evening, when you see the red color, which is less sensitive, but it travels very far because of long wavelength. Blue, indigo, and violet, you don't see because that amount is so small and eyes are very less sensitive. Blue is the first color where your eyes have enough sensitivity and the amount of color is enough to be visible in sky. And rest of the places, nature predominantly uses green color because it is very easy to visualize, appreciate by your eyes. So we don't know the reason why eyes are more sensitive to green, whether green was the reason eyes evolved or eyes were the reason green came in. Is a chicken and egg story, but we know the fact. Anything which is green looks very pleasant and very comfortable. Okay. This is I'll spend few minutes over here. Again, something taken from nature. We see these beautiful colors in all the butterflies, peacocks, and lot of beetles and other things. And we all believe that these colors are because of the real chemical colors which are added into these objects, like we do see that in our fabrics and other places. And that's the reason dye and color industry is very, very important, but it's very polluting also. Nature knows pollution very well, and nature has been the master creator. And nature decided that they want to give you beautiful colors without pollution. And all these colors which you are seeing in all these objects are not because of pigment. They are structurally colored material, which means the fibers which are made up, they arrange in certain fashion that the white light, when shine on it, scatters in certain way that you see green, blue, and other shades. So all these colors are not because of pigment, they are because of the scattering of the light. And that's why it's called structurally colored material. Now, how do you prove that this is not a pigment, but a structure? A structure can be destroyed. So one of the simplest experiment you do, you take a peacock feather, which you can get very easily in your neighborhood. Just go to the some shop and buy a nail polish remover. Nail polish remover is nothing but an acetone. You put small amount of acetone in a plate and soak one of the feather of the peacock in the plate and dip it in that acetone. After few minutes, what will happen? The color of the feather will become or will disappear, and there is no color in the acetone which has come. If this was a pigment, if this disappears from the feather, then it should have dissolved in acetone and acetone should have become colored. Here, the acetone remains colorless as well as the feather remains colorless, which means there was no pigment or there was no dye. The reason this happens is because acetone is a solvent which interacts with the fibers in the feather and destroys that, it swells the fiber and destroys that arrangement. The moment that arrangement is destroyed, that scattering gets affected and the color gets lost. And this has huge implication in future, that if you can learn how to arrange fibers in a certain way to get a certain color, then all the pollution which is because of this dyes and pigment industry, they all can be prevented. It's a major source of pollution. And these colors will be everlasting. They won't fade because till the texture is there, the colors will remain same. So we are hoping that the future of all the colors will not be because of dyes and pigment. It will be because of the structure, and we will call them structurally colored materials. And these materials will be scratch proof. They won't lose their color. They won't lose their shine till the texture is maintained. Even if the texture is destroyed, you just heat it and the texture will come back, or you just dry it and the texture will be back. And depending on your mood, depending on the exposure solvent, you can change the colors at your own wish. You don't need to go to any workshop and change the colors. You can have multiple colors in an object. Imagination will be the limit there. So huge, huge breakthrough which people are trying. Can you learn from the nature? And so again, the bio-inspired engineering aspect. Can you engineer a material's fiber in such a way that they become structurally colored? And that's a very interesting and open challenge. So just to conclude, magic and science are nothing. They are same. They are just two sides of the coin. Science is everywhere. We can discuss, spend few minutes here. You tell me anything what you see around you, and we can connect to one of the science or the scientific principle which you learn. You don't need to be in the labs and big research labs to do science. Nature is a beautiful lab which teaches you wonderful principles of science and enables you to think and learn science. So open your eyes, be curious, and slowly you'll realize you have become one of the best scientists we have around. With this, I will stop here and take some questions and comments to discuss what views people have it. And if somebody has a comment or something, I'll be happy to take that. We have some time left. Yes.
So, thanks so much for the wonderful lecture. I think you can now turn on your video. Please see if that.
I can turn. Okay, let me see. Yeah, it is turning on. Okay, good. Yeah.
So I'm sure all the participants are really mesmerized with your lecture. And if, maybe a couple of questions, if you want to take now, we can, ask participants, they can ask one or two questions quickly. Any participant, anyone? I'm sure, everybody's very excited. They're all saying that, it was a wonderful lecture. And is there any question you people have,
Yeah, just the take home message, open your eyes, go outside, be curious. Don't be busy with your cell phone. Just look around you, beautiful signs. You just look at the dirty water, which I didn't have the time, and you see beautiful colors there in dirty water. That's again the scattering. There's an oil. There's a question from Divya. Divya, quickly, one question. I don't know whether she's allowed to unmute or we'll type it. Yeah. Divya Diksha's hand is up. I don't know what it is.
Divya, can you unmute yourself and ask the question now?
Hello.
Yes, Divya.
Yes, thank you for the so interesting lecture, sir. Sir, I have a question. As we are encountering different kinds of chemicals in cosmetics and all over the elements that we are using these days. So I know I am a biotech student. So the question is how, because of all of these mutations are, my question is, the chemicals are creating so much mess and the mutations also, but why are we surviving because all of this, in spite of all of these problems, sir?
It is just a race against time. We don't know who is winning. We feel we are winning, but I'm not sure that's the right statement. You see the environmental damage and everything. See, it's a life. Everybody wants to live. Everybody wants to look beautiful, colored clothes, colored, everything wants to be colored, but that's the price you pay. And hope this structurally colored material developed by both the biology as well as the engineers, then we don't have to worry about this pollution from colors and dyes. But I completely agree, but I will not say who is winning because I think we are losing very fast.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, Siddharth, go ahead now.
Sir, I have a question, sir. So my question says that, sir, when we look at the plants and they are very affectionate with art, how is it so?
What's that?
So my question says that when we look at the plants, the greenery in our surroundings, so they are very affectionate with our feelings
Ah.
and what we say. So how is
Yeah.
it so, sir? And sir, I am also a plant lover, sir. Why is it so, sir?
Yeah, it's because that your eyes are very sensitive to green color. So anything which is green will look more pleasing than any other color. So you have seen the green and red laser pointer. The moment same laser pointers, if somebody uses a green, it looks very pleasing and very bright laser pointer compared to red.
Okay, thank you so much.
So it is our eyes which create the illusion, and they love green color because it's much. That's the reason you will never find somebody who is a green color blind, because a green color blindness will come at the end when you lose complete sight, because that's the most sensitive pixel in your eyes.
I'm sure Siddharth now
Thank
you
you, sir.
Yeah. So we
more
need
gardening.
to stop somewhere.
Purvaja, next you can ask a question.
Yes, sir, I'm Purvaja Ganesh of class 8B. I'm studying in KTIIT Powai. So, sir, you said that green color is pleasant to the eye. So, is it true that red color and blue color is not pleasant to the eye then?
No, it's not. They're not pleasant to the eyes. This sense. So same amount of green, same amount of red, and same amount of blue. If you take, your eyes will pick up more green color. It will look much brighter, though all the color intensities are same. So because eyes are more sensitive, that is the only thing we are saying. Since they're more sensitive, they pick up more color and it looks good to them. But that does not mean eyes don't like red or blue color. No.
It's
It's
more
just that the eyes, yeah,
more comparative sense of pleasant.
yeah, more comfort in seeing that. Yeah.
Aditya Gupta
Hello, sir.
or Amit, you are there now, right now. Okay, Amit can.
Sir, the space is really black.
What is that?
The space is really black, sir.
It has to, light has to reach and light has to scatter. Otherwise, if there's no scattering, you see, to visualize something, okay, I didn't go to the image because time is limited. There are certain images which are very weak, there are certain images very strong, because eyes can only see when the path of the light changes. If the path of the light does not change, you will not see the light. You will not see any image or anything. So if there's a complete vacuum, there is nothing to scatter light, I don't think you can see anything. And that's the reason sometimes the glass quality is so good that you don't see the glass, and people walk in and get hurt they hit the glass. They don't realize there's a glass, because the particle size of that glass is so small that the path of the light does not change, and that glass is not visible to you.
Aditya, you want to ask a question?
Yes, sir. So I wanted to ask, like, all animals have different kinds of eyes. Like, their
Yes.
structure is different. So, are there animals that see the sky in maybe UV or some UV or higher colors?
It is based on science. I wouldn't be surprised if they're animal, but we need to study their eyes pattern, their eye sensitivity. But it won't be surprising tomorrow you find an animal which sees the color of the sky is violet or indigo, because they don't have to have the same sensitivity as humans are. There's no reason actually.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Next is Shravya, if you want to ask a question.
Sir, I'm a student of class 11. I just wanted to ask that in inorganic chemistry, there are so many exceptions, and there'll be one trend which says that it increases across a period. But suddenly the thing changes, and we have to remember so many exceptions. Why is it so?
Yeah, so that's the beauty of science. Okay, the science is not a history. There are two things. Remember, science is an observation. Science is an explanation or a hypothesis of an observation. Observation is sacrosanct. Don't ever say science has rules. Do we teach you as first rule of Newton, second rule, third rule? There are no rules in science. It's only a hypothesis to explain an observation. And when you get a better hypothesis, science will change. So today we know gravity. Tomorrow, if you have a better understanding why the two objects attract, why the objects fall, it could be called something else. And that's the one, what I'm saying is observation should be sacrosanct, not the science. Science is a hypothesis. So in chemistry, what happens, the observations are changing so fast that same hypothesis does not apply. You can have two things, either the observations are changing, or you can say the hypothesis was not so good in chemistry to explain everything, whereas it was much better in physics and biology. But that's an unending battle. But what happens when you have one or two observations which you can't explain, you call it exceptions. When exceptions become 2, 3, 4, 5, you still call it exceptions. When the exceptions become too many, then you have to look for another hypothesis. And chemistry is so dynamically evolving that we are struggling to come up with a hypothesis which takes care of everything we observe. Does that answer? So science is a evolving phenomena. It's a hypothesis. It changes every time our observation changes. Our observation remains same. If something can't be explained, our hypothesis has to change. And that's happening very frequently in chemistry.
And that's the, I think, the fun of doing the, testing.
That's the fun of doing, yes.
Testing and
And
hypothesis.
tomorrow you can come out with a better explanation for why molecules behave. There is no reason it to be called atom. It can be called Divya, Shruti, or anybody, any one of you.
All right, great. So Ankara Rao, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello, sir. My name is Sankara.
Go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, everything we see is not true, is it?
It's a combination. See, the two parts of the vision. One is the signal detection, which is like a camera, which your eyes work. And the second part is the processing, which is your brain processes the image. So there are cases when eyes can see, but your brain processes differently. That's what people see ghosts. Ghost is not a nonsense. It is just that for certain people, same signal is processed differently by the brain. So the second process has gone wrong. You see something, they see something else, and you laugh at them. Don't laugh at them. There are certain people who are blind because they can't detect the signal, but processing is in place. For those people, you can connect a camera and then connect it, and their blindness can be cured. So now, based on this information, let me see what your question is.
I think we can move on to the next student now, Shaurya Agrawal. We have still a lot of students raising hands.
You monitor the time, eh?
Yes, yes. No, I think, you finished very well on time. So
I just wanted to have more discussion.
That's right. Great. Shaurya Agrawal, you want to ask a question and unmute yourself?
Sir, can I audible?
You are.
Yes.
Sir, what happens when something goes into black hole?
Asking a wrong person. Mine will be guess. I don't want to guess it. It's not my domain. I'm not really I don't know everything.
You need a better physics person to actually talk about.
I'm sure you will find somebody very good to help you with that.
And that's why I think you have to explore more IT Bombay faculty. We will.
Yeah.
Okay, Rohan Mane, you want to ask a question?
Am I audible?
You are.
Yes.
Sir, can you please explain the structural color imparting principle again?
Yeah. So what happens? Let's say you take different threads, okay? And the way you arrange the threads, those threads have to be arranged at a very small dimension, because the size of the light is around 400 to 750 nanometer. That's your white light. For it to scatter in different direction, your object should be arranged in the same time scale, same length scale. So these beetles, peacocks have fibers which are dimensions of few nanometer, and they are bundled into few hundreds of nanometer and arranged in certain fashion that one color gets scattered more than the other, and that's the color you see. And that's the same thing happens if you see dirty water. In dirty water, you see a lot of colors, isn't it? The reason you see a lot of colors in dirty water is there's oil in that water. And the oil forms a thin film at the surface, and oil in water forms is micelles and vesicles. And they scatter the light at different colors, and you see multiple colors in. You can take soap water, do an experiment at home. Keep adding soap to water. At certain point, you start to see colors in that water. That is because you formed this object of the size of the wavelength of the light to get scattered. And that is the structurally colored material. You need to create a scattering at that length scale, which is the length scale of visible and white light.
All right. Now next is,
So, sorry, we can take few questions from the chat also. Okay.
I think let's first take the live who are raising hand. Rutuja, you want to ask?
Hello, sir. I am Rituja. I am now pursuing Masters in Biotechnology from Institute of Science. So, sir, in your lecture, you explained about the phenomena of what seeing is believing. I want to ask about the optical illusions because
So no. I said seeing is not believing. I said seeing is not believing. It is, you don't see what your eyes see. You see
Yes,
what your
sir.
brain shows. So the optical, I know your questions. The optical illusions are, you are playing with how your mind processes the image. See, if you go deeper into how the brain works, every 30 or 60 millisecond, it requires for eyes to refresh. Okay. So brain takes the information for 60 milliseconds, and next 60 millisecond, it picks up information again. So if you change the information within next 60 seconds of frames, your brain, every time it picks up the picture or the signal, it's a different signal. And that's how you see illusions of light traveling fast, light moving, light going backward. So if you understand that 60 millisecond phenomena, you can do wonderful illusions because you are tricking the brain. So you're changing your signals every less than 60 millisecond, and the brain gets confused and shows you wonderful patterns. That's how optical illusions work.
Great. Rashi, you want to ask a question?
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. So I'm Rashi Ahuja of class 10th and I'm studying in Delhi Public School, Mathura Road. So my question is that how do we get to know the chemical composition of galaxies and stars in the space, and are they always accurate when we get to know about them?
See, in science, there is never the final answer. So what we know now, when we do that, they're based on certain assumption that this phenomena, this experiment relies on these facts. And based on this is a conclusion you draw whether the scattering has happened because of this composition or the other one. Then you take the material also from different places, you analyze that. Everything is based on the level of sophistication your experiment is doing. That is not the final answer. So as of today, what is known is the best composition which you have. Is that the final composition? I won't know that.
Great. So Priyanshu Dutt, you want to ask a question?
Yes, sir. Good morning. My name is Priyanshu Dutt. I had a question regarding, sir, you said that color intensity changes with depth.
Yes.
So is that in any way related to why we see a green pigment when we make two mirrors face each other? Because like by definition, mirrors are something that reflect 100% of light that falls. So why is it that we see a green pigment in the mirrors when we make two mirrors face each other?
No, I don't see. So first of all, the light color or the color intensity changes with depth is a Lambert-Beard law, which says the absorbance is proportional to epsilon, concentration, and path length. Since water concentration is not changing from bottle to the bigger bottle to swimming pool to ocean, the only change which happens is the path length, which is the depth.
Okay, sir.
And mirror mixing the lights is a completely different phenomena that has nothing to do with depth.
Okay.
So mixing of colors and mixing of light, they're two. When you mix colors, you have a different effect, and you mix light, you have a different color combination. So please read two phenomena on internet: mixing of colors and mixing of lights. They operate on a very different principle of colors.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
From Dija, the way. Dija, you want to ask a question?
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. I'm Dvija. I wanted to actually ask that how can clear objects be transparent and still visible at the same time? Like they're transparent, but they're still visible. How can that happen at the same time?
See, the transparency is only, so you can say the more transparent or less transparent. But if you can prevent the path of the light to completely remain unchanged, which means the light is coming, object is in between, and the path of the light does not change when it reaches your eyes, that object will be invisible. And that's the scientific phenomena which people are using to make invisible materials. What they do is they coat the object with a certain materials which bend the light at a certain angle. So let's say if I have my finger here, and the light is coming from there and coming towards my eyes. If I bend the light at every point like this, it travels around my finger and comes to my eyes, my finger will become invisible. Those materials are called metamaterial. So you need a deflection of light to a certain amount for your eyes to see an image. If light travels straight, your eyes will not see that image. So transparency and more transparency is relative. Just because the path length of the light is changing smaller, more smaller the change, more transparent the image will be. And if path length does not, the path does not change, it will be invisible.
We'll take 2 quick questions at the end. So next question for the participant. I can't see your name clearly.
Good morning, sir. I'm Suchitra. So
Yes.
I wanted to ask, you were speaking about the structural colored materials, right? My doubt is whether we can bring about only Vibgayar or any other color like gray, black, or cyan maybe.
Yes, you see colors in, if you look at peacock, there are so many colors in peacock and butterflies. Now, almost every color you see in different butterflies. So if you know how to control the texture, I'm sure we can create any color. We have to learn from the nature how nature does that control so beautifully. We still don't know how to do that. But every color should be possible, which is within the domain of white light.
We'll take now maybe 1 or 2 last questions. Srishti,
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
So my question is, so you said in the starting that we only see what our mind already has, the information. So, sir, what about the new learning? What mind knows, sir? What about the new learning, sir? Then how we will learn, how we will see the things that are new to us. Like that's the observation power, I think.
Yeah, that's the reason you need to go deeper into that. You have 2 things. You observe something and you keep on observing it. Now you try to understand what this could be. That's where the science is. Or you first have to make sure that what you are seeing is not an illusion. See, otherwise you'll spend the rest of your life in explaining the phenomena, where phenomena itself is an illusion. So you make sure that 20 or 100 different people also see the same thing before you put too much time and energy into that. If everybody is seeing the same way and everybody is confined and everybody is in same position, more or less, then that's a phenomena. Now you have to look for an explanation and a hypothesis to explain that. But new observations cannot be slave that we can't see it. I don't think that's the right connection to make it.
Chandrika Sangvi, last question from you. I think, Shaurya, we have already taken one from you earlier. So Chandrika can be last. Chandrika, you are there. You want to unmute yourself and talk?
Sir, my name is Kanak Sangvi, and my question is that I have heard that the light waves, they are expanded, or the wavelengths are increased when they move through a gravitational field. So I want to know if this is true, and also if it's true, then does a person standing nearer to an object see a different color than a person which is far away?
I'm not really sure about it. I'm not good in that domain, how it changes as it passes through different places. I will restrict my comments. I don't know. I don't want to give a wrong answer. So
we will take the last question from Shaurya Agrawal once more. He is interested to ask something.
Yes, sir. Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
So my question is, what happened in Touch Me Not?
Yeah, that's a very different. It's just a chemical process there. When you touch it, you disturb the chemical balance. See, do remember all your biological functions. Your body has millions of functions operating at the same time with millions of sensors, and they all are slave to a very small fluctuations in the sodium, potassium, and salt concentration levels. And that's the reason your body is extremely sensitive to salt. It is extremely efficient. You mess with the salt and your body behaves funny. So there's a complete chemical balance in the Touch Me Not plant. And when you touch it, you basically disturb that whole process, which triggers the whole cycle, and everything just shrinks till that process recovers, till that chemical composition disturbance recovers.
Great.
And
So
that's what happens here.
the session now. So thanks so much, Professor Anil Kumar, for the magical lecture on magic of science. So this was really
Thank you.
surprising. Every participant is happy. They in fact left their session break as well, tea break. So now they have to jump into the next session directly. So thank you so much from the
Thank you,
House
sir.
Committee,
Thank you.
all the members of society. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So to all the participants, we are just going to have